You had something with milk in it recently. Coffee, cereal, tea, cheese on bread. You did not think about it. Nobody does. Now here is the part nobody tells you. Roughly two-thirds of the adults alive on this planet cannot properly digest it. Not a small minority, not an unlucky few, the majority. In much of East Asia, the figure climbs above 90%. And that is not a defect. That is the original setting. Every mammal on Earth, every single one, drinks milk as an infant and then switches the ability off. The enzyme that breaks milk down is supposed to shut down after weaning. That is how the system was designed. A kitten does it. A calf does it. A wolf cub does it. Your ancestors did it. If you can drink a glass of milk right now without consequences, you are not normal. You are a mutation. And the mutation is recent enough that we can watch it spread through the genomes of dead people. So why did humans start drinking milk at all? The answer involves an enzyme that was never meant to survive childhood, a technique so awkward that herders had to trick their animals into cooperating, a genetic change that ranks among the most aggressive ever found in our species, and an entire civilization that drinks dairy every day without the gene at all. And the strangest part is this. We were drinking milk for thousands of years before our bodies were able to handle it. Let's start with why this should not work. Milk is a solution of fat, protein, and a sugar called lactose. To use that sugar, you need an enzyme called lactase, which splits lactose into two smaller sugars your intestine can absorb. Without lactase, the lactose travels intact into your large intestine, where bacteria ferment it. That produces gas, cramping, and diarrhea. In mammals, the gene that makes lactase switches off after weaning, always. And there is a good evolutionary reason. Producing an enzyme costs energy, and once a young mammal is eating solid food, that enzyme is dead weight. Turning it off is efficient. Turning it off also has a second effect that is easy to miss. It stops the infant from competing with the next infant for the mother's milk supply. Weaning is not a suggestion. It is enforced biologically. So here is the thesis of this entire story. We did not evolve to drink milk. We drank it anyway, and then evolved. The behavior came first, the biology came limping after it. And there is something else worth noticing about milk before we go further. Almost everything humans eat is stolen. A seed is meant to become a plant. A muscle is meant to move an animal. A fruit is a bribe aimed at a bird. Milk is the only thing in nature produced specifically to be food. It is the only substance an organism makes purely to be consumed by another organism. And we took it from a different species entirely. Now, before any of that could happen, somebody had to solve a problem that people rarely think about, because we assume milk simply comes out. It does not. A cow does not release milk on demand. Milk letdown is a hormonal reflex triggered by oxytocin, and in cattle that reflex is normally set off by the presence of the calf, the sight, the sound, the smell, the physical contact. Take the calf away, and the animal holds the milk back. The udder can be full and the milk will not come. Ancient herders had to work around this. In Egyptian and Mesopotamian art, cows are shown being milked with a calf tethered nearby, present but blocked, close enough to trigger the reflex, restrained enough not to take the milk. And among East African herding peoples, ethnographers documented a stranger solution still. If a calf died, herders would sometimes preserve its stuffed hide and set it beside the mother during milking so the cow would let down for a dead animal she believed was alive. That is not farming. That is manipulation of another species' nervous system by people who had no idea what a hormone was. But there was a much larger obstacle, and it was economic. For thousands of years after domestication, the point of a cow, a sheep, or a goat was meat. You raised the animal, and at the end you killed it. Dairying requires the opposite decision. It requires keeping the animal alive, feeding it through winters, protecting it, and extracting small returns over years instead of one large return at the end. The archaeologist Andrew Sherritt named this shift the secondary products revolution in 1981, the moment humans stopped harvesting animals and started harvesting from them. Milk, wool, and traction instead of carcasses. Sherritt placed it thousands of years after domestication. He was wrong about the timing, and the evidence that corrected him came from an unexpected place. Broken pots. Fat soaks into unglazed pottery and stays there. Richard Evershed, a biogeochemist at the University of Bristol, developed a method for pulling those residues back out and reading their carbon isotope signatures, which distinguish dairy fats from the fat of an animal's carcass. In 2008, Evershed and his colleagues published results in Nature identifying milk residues on pottery from northwestern Anatolia dating to roughly 9,000 years ago, essentially as early as we have herds at all. Then in 2013, a team including Melanie Salk and Peter Bogucki published something even more specific, also in Nature. In Kujawia, in what is now Poland, archaeologists had long been finding fragments of pottery covered in small holes. Nobody was certain what they were for. Residue analysis settled it. They were strainers, and they were coated in milk fat. They are cheese sieves. They are around 7,000 years old. Think about what that means. Before writing, before the wheel, before metal, somebody in Northern Europe was separating curds from whey, and they almost certainly could not digest fresh milk. Which brings us to the gene. In 2002, a Finnish team led by Nabil Inata and Irma Järvelä published a paper in Nature Genetics identifying the change responsible. It is not in the lactase gene itself. It sits about 14,000 base pairs upstream, inside a neighboring gene called MCM6, in a stretch of DNA that acts as a switch controlling whether the lactase gene stays on. A single letter change at that position, the variant known as -13910T, jams the switch open. Lactase production never stops. One letter, out of 3 billion, and when geneticists examined the DNA around it, they found something dramatic. The region shows one of the strongest signatures of recent natural selection found anywhere in the human genome. The variant did not drift into place. It was driven hard and fast in only a few hundred generations, which raises the obvious question: what was pushing it? For decades, the leading answer was calcium. At high latitudes, there is less sunlight, so less vitamin D, so worse calcium absorption, so more rickets. Lactose happens to improve calcium uptake. Milk-drinking Europeans in cloudy northern climates would therefore have healthier skeletons. It was a tidy explanation, and it was taught for years. Then, in 2022, a very large team led by Richard Evershed and the geneticist Mark Thomas at University College London published a study in Nature that took the tidy explanation apart. They did something nobody had done at that scale. They combined roughly 7,000 pottery residues from hundreds of European sites with ancient DNA from around 1,600 prehistoric individuals, and they lined the two records up against each other in time. The result did not match the story. Milk consumption across Europe was widespread and stable for thousands of years, while the lactase persistence variant remained rare. People were drinking dairy in large quantities without the gene. Generation after generation, apparently untroubled enough to stop. So the gene was not spreading because milk was suddenly available. Milk had been available the whole time. Their proposed explanation is grimmer, and it is the best line in the whole field. Under normal conditions, being unable to digest lactose is an inconvenience. You get cramps, you get diarrhea. You are uncomfortable, and then you are fine. But under famine, or during an epidemic, that same inconvenience stops being trivial. If you are starving, diarrhea drains the few calories you have. If you are already ill and dehydrated, it can kill you. And in a crisis, milk is often the last food still being produced, because a living herd keeps giving when the harvest has failed. So the selection was not gentle and constant. It was episodic and brutal. During the good years, the gene did nothing worth mentioning. During the famines and the plagues, the people who could drink milk safely lived, and the people who could not, disproportionately did not. The gene did not spread because milk was good for you. It spread because of what happened to the people who could not handle it when everything else went wrong. Now, Europe is not the only place this happened, and this is where the story gets genuinely remarkable. In 2007, Sarah Tishkoff, a geneticist then working on African populations and now at the University of Pennsylvania, published a study in Nature Genetics examining lactase persistence among East African pastoralists in Tanzania, Kenya, and Sudan. Many of them could digest milk perfectly well, but they did not carry the European variant. They carried different ones, different single-letter changes, at different positions in the same regulatory switch, producing the same outcome by a separate route. The most widespread of them, at position minus 14,010, appears to have arisen independently, and recently within roughly the last 3 to 7,000 years. That is convergent evolution, caught in the act in our own species in recorded genetic history. Two populations, thousands of kilometers apart, facing the same pressure, arriving at the same solution through different mutations. The answer was not inherited from a common ancestor. It was invented twice. But here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you, because it suggests the gene may not have been necessary at all. Mongolia. Mongolian culture is built on dairy to a degree few societies on Earth can match. Fermented mare's milk, dried curd, milk tea, milk vodka, dairy is not a supplement there. It is the foundation of the diet. And the frequency of lactase persistence in the Mongolian population is close to zero. In 2020, a team including the archaeological scientist Christina Warrener published work in Nature Ecology and Evolution analyzing dental calculus, hardened plaque, from ancient skeletons across the eastern Eurasian steppe. Milk proteins were trapped in it. Dairying on those grasslands goes back roughly 5,000 years, essentially uninterrupted, in populations that never developed the gene. So how does it work? Two things. Fermentation, which lets bacteria consume much of the lactose before the human does, and the gut microbiome itself, which can adapt to process lactose even when the human enzyme is absent. That is the same workaround that lets people across East Asia eat yogurt and hard cheese today. Aged cheese contains almost no lactose at all. The bacteria already ate it, which means the genetic solution was never the only solution. It was just the one that happened in Europe. Everywhere else, the problem got solved culturally, with time, with bacteria, with technique. The gene is not the story of how humans learned to drink milk. It is one regional footnote in a much larger story about people who worked it out without it. There is one more thing, and it is in the sky. The Greeks called the pale band of light across the night sky the Galaxias Kyklos, the Milky Circle. Their myth explained it as milk spilled from the breast of the goddess Hera. The Romans translated it as Via Lactea, the Milky Way. And when astronomers eventually needed a word for the enormous rotating structures of stars that fill the universe, they took the Greek one, galaxy, from gala, milk. When we named the largest objects we can see after the first food any of us ever tasted. Tonight, somewhere, a herder in Mongolia will pour fermented mare's milk into a bowl. Someone in Kenya will drink milk from cattle their family has kept for generations. Someone in a city will pour milk into coffee without looking at it, and 2/3 of the people doing that will be quietly failing to digest it and will not particularly care. The animals have changed. The processing has changed. The genetics changed in some populations and never changed in others. But the act is the same one somebody performed 9,000 years ago in Anatolia, taking a substance produced by another species for its own young and deciding it belonged to us instead. We were not built for it. We took it anyway, and then our bodies caught up.